Hello, and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey.
My name is Dan.
And today we are recording on May 4th, so happy Star Wars Day, belated to you by the time you're listening to it.
Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you all.
We're very excited. We're going to a Star Wars trivia contest tonight, which is going to be... I think we're probably going to get stomped, but it's okay.
I don't know. It depends on the questions.
The questions in the audience.
Preparing for tonight, I was looking up some Star Wars trivia, and the ends of the spectrum are so far apart.
We were talking about I said my favorite Star Wars trivia question that I had answered correctly, and I ended up misremembering it and got it wrong, and I revisited it. But how many engines does the Tantive V4 have? And the answer was 10, right?
11.
11?
Remember, it's 4, 3, 4.
Because you said 12 and I said 10 or something, or the other.
I said 10. You said 12. Yeah.
Either, and yeah, so it was.
I have a quick one for you.
Oh God.
2 of them.
Okay.
Who was the first person to speak in the Star Wars series? The entire
chronologically or release order?
Release order, first one.
Okay, let me think. Is it C-3PO?
It was.
Hey!
And who is the only actor who's been in every single movie of the Star Wars saga?
Anthony Daniels?
Yep.
Always C-3PO.
Yep.
In my opinion, this is my weekly quota of hitting The Rise of Skywalker. My favorite C-3PO movie is Rise of Skywalker. It is the best C-3PO's ever done.
Yes.
So funny. Before he's possessed, and then everything with Babu Frick is just...
Always comes back to Mr. Frick.
Putting it out into the ether. I'm wearing a Rise of Skywalker shirt right now, and tonight for trivia I will be wearing my Babu Frick shirt.
Oh, nice. I'm wearing this to trivia.
I got to do an outfit change. This is fun because we usually do a trivia. This is an aside from what we're talking about, but we usually do a trivia every other week or so. And Dan always asks me really painstaking history or geography based questions to try to get me ready. And I never know those. But I got both of his Star Wars questions.
You did, and it's okay. I ask you the history and geography questions, and I missed it on Thursday. I was very angry.
Dan is the only reason that we play some trivia. But that's a story for another time. I want to kick off by saying this week we are going to have 2 topics. We are not going to spiral into a nonstop argument like whatever that was last week.
State of Star Wars. No, I'm just kidding. My opinion on that is very much similar to yours.
Yes, and if it's not, we'll maybe have to throw hands. But today we're going to talk about The Bad Batch, both the season finale, the series finale, as well as our thoughts on the series as a whole, which I'm sad and excited about. Love the finale. And we're also going to talk about the future direction of Star Wars' animation. We're going to kind of present it how we did some ideas from the end of The Bad Batch last week. We're going to throw some ideas out there and say whether they're unlikely, it's possible, or likely to happen as a future Star Wars animation show, particularly thinking about what the next show is going to be. Mm-hmm. With that, I want to start with our usual introduction. Dan, what have you been watching, reading, or playing?
Continuing West Wing, powering through it. We are in season 5 of 6. Haven't played as much. I've hopped back into Rainbow Six Siege for a couple games. It makes me remember why I stopped playing it.
What about it? I've never played it.
Some people are very good.
Are you one of those people?
No.
Well, that makes sense.
And yeah, that's if you know, you know.
And I don't know. And I think I'll keep it that way.
It's been out for 14 years, and some people haven't deviated. Now 10 years, and people haven't deviated from.
Yeah, the whales.
Game. Yeah.
Is that all for you this week?
And Marvel Snap.
Obviously,
of course.
Such a great game.
How about you?
I finally, after playing it, literally, this game came out the week that we started this podcast, and we're now into what week, 10 or so?
I have no idea.
Something like that. A lot. I finally have completed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's story and the vast majority of the side quests, which I'm very thrilled about. I really, really, really love the game. I thought it was fantastic.
It's exciting.
I would say within the next week or so, keep an eye out for an episode of me talking about it. I'm very excited to discuss what I loved about it, where I think the direction the game's headed. So good. I loved it. It took me about 85 hours to complete, which is an astounding amount of time. But I did, like I said, do all the side quests. Yeah. Highly recommend it. if you have yet to play it. But you should start with the remake and then go into Rebirth.
Just write down the list. I'll see if I can work through it.
I would love you to play it, but
Well,
Dan has what he calls his Joey list.
I know.
It's very long.
It's too long. Right now, the top priority on the Joey list is Last of Us Part 2, and then Fallen Order, and then Jedi Survivor. Maybe Horizons in there.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh, these are all...
I have Ghosts.
I know you do.
Got it at GameStop for $6.
That's a steal. That is a
I got the PS4
quality game.
I got the PS4 edition, but
well, you can upgrade for $12.
Yeah, the PS5 edition.
It's and it's got the DualSense and everything. Anyway, we have spiraled. I also am watching the X-Men animated series as I've been. We're making a little bit of progress. We're still kind of slow. Really excited to start X-Men 97 though, but
aren't we all?
Add it to the Joey list.
I'll watch.
You have to remember, the Joey list is also long for Joey too.
Yeah, how's Ted Lasso coming?
It's I'm going to throw her under the bus. I said to my wife in January, it was like, we should probably watch X-Men 97, or X-Men, because 97's coming out, or we could watch Ted Lasso. She said, we're going to rewatch Arrested Development, which I never regret. But
yeah. It's always money
this
in
is
the
for
banana
you,
stand.
Jenna. There's always money in the banana stand. It's one banana, Michael. How much could it cost? $10?
Ironically, that was a little part of West Wing. Not quite the
banana stand?
No, they were talking about how wealthy people are disconnected from reality, and one of the things was, how much does a gallon of milk cost? And they didn't know. Because
that's kind of funny.
Yeah. And then they ask somebody who does know. That's all. It did remind me of there's always how much does it cost? $10.
Do you want to hear a funny milk story that is somehow actually Star Wars related?
Yeah.
So as you may know if you're listening to this, they this year for May the 4th released blue milk for Star Wars. I bought 3 gallons of it, or 3 half gallons of it. I loved it. And we normally buy Fairlife milk, which has a really long shelf life.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot how quick blue milk or regular milk, takes to expire. Between having almond milk and Fairlife, I have a whole unopened blue milk that expired. So my wife wasn't thrilled about that one, but it shouldn't be. It's totally my bad, though. I probably shouldn't have bought 2 at once.
Yeah, but now you know for next year.
It is delicious, and you should try it while it's still around. Anyway, we are really spiraling today, aren't we?
Back to the Bad Batch.
The Bad Batch.
Final Bad Batch.
Season 3, episode 15, called The Cavalry Has Arrived. Wrecker's first line in the Clone Wars, and the first line spoken by a Bad Batch member, which I thought was cute. Mm-hmm. And I think, in a way, the Cavalry, we like to talk about what the meaning of the episode is. And I think we both had our ideas of what the Cavalry was, and I think we were both wrong.
Yeah.
I think the Cavalry was each little... They were kind of splintered, the characters for this episode, and I think they each were the Cavalry, where they were like bouncing back. Like one group of them was in trouble, then the other came to save them, and another group was in trouble, then the other came to save them. And I think they just kept doing that. And I think for me, that's what the title meant. What do you think?
I agree. They were the Cavalry.
Which is more fitting. I feel like sometimes as Star Wars fans, we get so wrapped up in trying to anticipate what's going to happen and pulling in characters, maybe characters that have died, we thought, or, other large characters like Rex. But I think this honestly was a better story for focusing on the Bad Batch.
Right.
Like, the story's better off for not trying to pull a bunch of stuff in.
I agree.
And I think they pulled enough stuff in to make it feel really important. Yeah.
And they got the ending they deserved. It was a show about them. They weren't overshadowed by somebody else. And it wasn't Clone Wars season 7.5.
No, and I think for the show being called the Clone Wars, there was a lot of focus on the clones, but it wasn't about the clones.
Right.
Most of the time. I think for this, it was very refreshing to have a show about the clones and really telling their story. And I think we'll talk about it. It's fantastic. Yeah. I really, really loved it. I was a huge fan of the way that this episode went. How about you?
Oh yeah, I loved it. Watched it Wednesday before work.
Me too. It was enjoyable. My first thing is we have been speculating throughout this whole season that there might be 16 episodes. I think this 50-minute episode was essentially episodes 15 and 16. Yeah. And I'm honestly glad it came out at once.
Yeah. Can you imagine if they split that up?
Oh my God, it would
Where
be
would
terrible.
they even have done it?
There was a point where it was like when I was right after the Bad Batch got kidnapped, where I was like, this is where they were going to end this. Mm-hmm. And it would have been a brutal week.
Yeah.
I would not have had fun. So I think all is well.
I agree.
So other than that, we both clearly really liked it. Do you want to just kind of start walking through the episode as we do?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we start, we're on Tantus, and I do want to say, the planet that Tantus is on is called Wayland. I don't know that we've ever actually said that. Mm-hmm. So Wayland, there you go, it's the planet. So we've got the Bad Batch kind of, moving through the jungle after they, in the previous episode, had fought this ginormous monster. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of like catching up with everyone where they are. Hemlock's being Hemlock, kind of being a jerk. And Emery's in the lab Emery is in the lab with Echo. So that's kind of where we're starting with everything. How do you want to go about doing it? You want to kind of just like gently progress through the episode with all the storylines until they converge?
Yeah.
So I think we can start with the sad Crosshair line about Clone Force 99 dying with Tech.
Yeah. And
this is also where we can talk about Tech Watch.
I will be very subdued for Tech Watch today.
Because you weren't earlier.
What?
So, if you've been listening, we have a weekly segment called Tech Watch where I aggressively believed that my favorite member of the Bad Batch, Tech, did not in fact die in last season, but was somehow going to return, much like Palpatine. Turns out, and you can hear the sound of me eating my words here, I was wrong. Tech is not alive, and that's okay.
I agree.
I honestly think it strengthens his sacrifice in a way that was really good for a fan of the character.
Yeah.
It sucks. I hate it.
It does, but at the end of the day, Clone Force 99 was a team. They would do anything for the team, up into and including sacrificing themselves, which we saw. And
it clearly was a plan, like part of something they had programmed.
Plan 99.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like, we'll get into the CX troopers aspect when we, run into them. But I just think overall it was really well executed for Tech being dead. I wish that there was a little less,
there was a
red herring. It was, like, there was such focus placed on particularly CX2. That made you think whether it was Tech or not. It's someone.
And it still could be Tech. We don't know.
I don't want to think about that. All right. So we
go. That's my first concession of the entire Tech Watch. And I get shot down.
Anyway. So Crosshair says that line that Clone Force 99 died with Tech. And in a certain sense, that is kind of true. Like, it's a grim, pessimistic way of looking at it. But it is true. Like, they've not been the same.
Right, and they each had a specific role in Clone Force 99. As we've kind of talked about, the stereotypes, the tropes that they continued to play up. Mm-hmm. And once they were gone, they lost Tech. And they didn't really replace them.
It took, like, Echo... Like, I think about when they went to the base. I'm forgetting the outpost, that Crosshair episode where they went back to. Yeah. Like, Echo and Omega were working on the computers together. Like, they weren't filling the void. They were just kind of, like, trying their best to compensate for it.
Put a Band-Aid on it, yeah.
Uh-huh. Which is so sad. So, while I don't agree that Crosshair was right in saying that and wanting to go sacrifice himself, and that they needed to go contact Rex and Echo. Mm-hmm. Or, no, I'm sorry. Just Rex, I think is what they said. No, I'm used to saying Rex and Echo.
Yeah, just Rex.
But I'm happy that they stayed together. Because while they're not Clone Force 99... in its truest form, they're still the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
And that I think that, like, set the tone for me to be like, this is going to be an emotional episode no matter what. So they agree they're going to go in. Next thing we kind of see is Hemlock and Rampart talking, which is so funny. Mm-hmm. They're so stupid, both of them.
Yeah.
They both think that they're important to the Empire. Rampart still thinks he's important to the Empire and can regain his favor, which is not surprising, but insane. And then Hemlock it's literally the same, not the same character, but, like, it's the same exact thing where Hemlock was in charge of this really important thing, so was Rampart.
So was Krennic.
So was Krennic. It's the same thing, and we're going to talk about
Thrawn.
You could argue Thrawn still might be, but Thrawn's more important than these fools.
At the time.
I would say it's hard to...
At the time. They're all working on...
independent Empire projects.
Right.
And I want to talk about when we ultimately find where the funding from this goes to.
Yeah.
I want to talk about later how the Empire sets itself up for failure, but we can save that for later.
We could do a whole episode on that.
I know, and it's great. But, Rampart's left in his cell with Hemlock after Hemlock basically talks down to him for a little bit. And we see Emery and Echo talking about how they, need to get into the lab. Mm-hmm. Or get into the vault where the children are. We then cut to Omega and the kids, which has been just... I was very worried about them the entire time, all the episodes we've seen them. But I don't know, when I saw this episode, I started to get this feeling of, like, I think they might be able to do this. Like, really, it was Omega. And there's so many excellent Omega moments that we'll talk as we go through. But we see, this droid, the droid that comes in to take their... the droid comes in to take their blood, like it does. And Omega was actually able to reprogram it, which seems like such a Bad Batch thing to do.
Tech.
Oh, yeah.
You can just say the T word.
Tech. There are so many things in this episode that connect Omega and Tech, I feel like.
Yeah.
And especially at the end, we'll talk about.
And I think that's been one of the themes of this season. It's kind of what we talked about earlier. Omega really taking the role of each of them independently.
Mm-hmm. And it just, this is part of where I wish that we had a more, in hindsight, nothing's more concrete than falling from a ginormous height. But at the same time...
But you say that, but we've seen people.
I wish that the Tech sacrifice was more concrete so that I could spend more time thinking about what he meant to the characters rather than maybe he's still alive. That's one of my...
you say that in hindsight, but if we watch Tech get... what is it, Fox? Who was the one who went down swinging in the Clone Wars?
Maybe Fox? I'm not sure.
Fox or I don't think it was Thorne. Thorne was...
Probably Fox.
If he went down in a Fox nature...
That would be really sad, too.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of a lose-lose. But...
yeah.
But yeah, so they... Anyway, Omega's connected. She reprograms a droid, and I thought it was very nice that we could see Dr. Scadler get hurt a little bit. She was terrible.
She was.
You hit me with the bioethics last week.
Yeah, I was on something last week. I apologize.
I don't know what you were on, but you were on something. So we end up, getting Dr. Scadler knocked out, and then Omega, that was nice. Omega is then able to go through the little tube system and take the kids to, presumably break out the Zilla Beast based on what we've seen last week.
Yes.
Did you think it was so cute how Jax had Baron, strapped to him, and then the Eva had the Tuca doll?
I didn't notice the Eva and Tuca doll.
It was tucked in just like Jax. It was so cute. I love these characters so much.
We can talk about them later.
We certainly will. So we see Emery, and one of my favorite parts of the episode comes when we see Emery and Echo get into the vault where the kids were, but they're obviously gone. And basically they hear that the Zilla's broken out, and Echo immediately knows that it's Omega.
Yeah.
And this just was the kickstart to the entire episode of Omega essentially being one step ahead of the Bad Batch because they've taught her so well. And Echo says it's exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
It was such a heartwarming moment, I feel like.
Do you think when Echo and Dr. Carr were walking into the vault, all those clone commandos standing there were confused, why is this TK trooper walking into the most secure place?
I thought about that, and then I tried to revisit in my mind, or did we see normal TK troopers in the vault? And I don't necessarily think so.
I don't think so.
But this is the kind of Star Wars stuff where I'm like, you know what? It's odd, but let it go, I guess.
But I think it also plays into just how many moving parts are in this plan, and if one part would have failed, how the House of Cards would have fallen with it.
And in a way, it was even crazier because it was like 3 independent plans all happening at once.
Yeah.
Which
and
is...
all it took was one
of them
for
not
example,
working.
Just one of the clone commandos to realize that's weird. That shouldn't be happening.
And we do see, really, like, Echo's mission kind of changes. The Bad Batch, Wrecker, Hunter, Crosshair fail, and Omega's plan works.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. But so we ultimately get through the system. The kids are starting to get a little worried and restless. But Omega eventually ends up breaking through that little panel that she saw and releases in full Clone Wars splendor the Zilla Beast.
How different would the Star Wars universe be if the Empire just bolted down their vents?
The vents, added railings. The infrastructure is not great.
OSHA would help.
Sheev doesn't have that. I don't think they have an HR department or a safety.
I know they have an HR department. I've seen Kylo Ren on SNL.
Oh man,
what is it, Matt the
radar technician?
Yeah,
that's a great skit.
Just a brief aside. I love how Star Wars is not afraid to lend their brand to parodies.
I think they've gotten. I think we talked about this
a little
at
bit.
Some point.
Pre-Disney, they were out there.
Yes, I'm happy they've. And that was from, I think, The Force Awakens.
Yeah, that was Disney.
So it was, and we don't give them enough credit sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think they have gotten looser and looser.
I mean, just looking at other Disney shows, how many can openly be parodied?
Not many. Maybe some Marvel stuff.
If that. But I mean...
There's some good SNL Marvel skits. The Hawkeye one in particular.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
But, again, I just want to... Kudos to Disney for letting people spoof them. We kind of talked about Robot Chicken last week. And Family Guy did the whole Star Wars... They did the whole original trilogy, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't think they did the prequels.
No, I think they just did the original trilogy. But
yeah, no, that I love it, and I think we're hopefully in more in for more stuff like that. But basically, we get a bunch of action with the Zilla Beast breaking out, which I thought was really cool. And we eventually find the Zilla just kind of wreaks a whole bunch of havoc.
Yeah.
And then it's just out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. I don't know what I expected. I think we did expect a little force connection with Omega. I think this makes a lot more sense.
The Zilla Beast is force sensitive, right? Or something? There were some
There's
weird
some
things with it.
Well, Palpatine wanted it to make lightsaber resistant clone armor. That's why he wanted it. But I think I'm very glad Omega didn't turn into using the Force. I think it.
Say it.
What?
Never mind.
What?
Nothing.
You want me to say not everybody needs to be a Jedi?
Yeah.
Dan has this thing where he thinks everyone's becoming a Jedi, which is not true. It's just Sabine. Dan has no comment.
Some of the most impactful characters in Star Wars are not force sensitive. That's all I'm saying.
Not everyone has to be force sensitive, but they can be. And I think I would not have asked for Sabine to be we're really spiraling. I would not have asked for Sabine to be force sensitive, but I love the way that they're approaching it. I think we need the origin. Why?
Yeah.
She probably thinks it'll help her find Ezra. We're talking about the Bad Batch, not Rebels or Ahsoka.
I didn't get to Rebels or Ahsoka. You got to Rebels or Ahsoka.
Right.
Anyway, so Zilla Beast out causing havoc, absolutely destroying everything in the Tanta space.
And we kind of catch up with the Bad Batch, and they see the Lurka Hounds, which made me think of Batcher, Miss Batcher.
Wrecker even brings it up.
Uh-huh. And I do want to say, this episode had me really worried for Wrecker the entire time. He was in rough shape at the beginning, and he got battered several times throughout this episode. I was pretty much nervous the entire time.
Yeah.
For all of them, really. Thanks, Tech. Has me very worried.
Well, and it doesn't help that Crosshair even says, if 3 of us go in, 3 of us are not coming out.
Well, that's what they said. But I might have been wrong. Anyway, the Bad Batch is able to take advantage of the Zilla Beast havoc, and they kind of go up, are able to go into that hangar through where the Zilla was. And we see Omega start to kind of continue to lay out her plan for the kids, where it's like, we need to climb up this to get out. Basically, Omega's plan was to follow the havoc of the Zilla Beast.
Only way out is up.
Is this an Andor reference?
Yeah.
One way out.
One way out.
Another one of the highlights for me for this episode was when Jax was nervous about like heights. He didn't like heights. She brought up Wrecker and how he doesn't like it, and he's the strongest person she knows. And I just thought it was so speaking to Omega's growth and strength that she's talking about this, and like, she's not condescending. Right. She's not like saying just get over it. She's just really reassuring and has like this, it's almost like sisterly, I feel like. Like, she's almost like treating them like she would treat her family.
Yeah.
How she has been treated by the Bad Batch.
Right.
This is the little mini Batch.
This is the found family.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that several times, a big theme. But so they end up going up. Hemlock ends up finding out about the Zillow. He's very unhappy.
Hemlock is, unhappy, but seems like he expected this to happen, and goes up his fancy elevator, and we see they weren't cloning; they were just hibernation chambers.
I think so. I saw one of the Kiners who does the music for this said that they referred to this group of CX clones as the worst batch. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah,
they were very cool, though.
They were sweet. Their armors were all.
I think, like, I've seen people say, like, these guys represent what the Bad Batch could be if they just stuck with the Empire.
Yeah.
Like, each specialized in one thing. I think like you said, we've seen the specialization kind of dissolve away as they've become, again, I hesitate to say this, but like real characters. In the Clone Wars, they were very much like, as I've said, the strong one and the smart one and the angry one and the leader.
Yeah. Like,
that's kind of fizzled. And I think this is showing what they could have been.
Right. Terrifying.
Oh, yes.
Terrifying. That's what they could have been.
And then we see Echo and Emery go into the Zillow chamber kind of thing and see the aftermath. And basically, Echo's able to piece together what Emery wants to do.
Yeah.
And asks her if there's a shortcut to get to where she's going. So this is kind of where we start to see everything converge. Because we see Echo, Emery meet up with Omega and the kids in this hangar where the kids are able to get onto a shuttle with Emery, and presumably the location that Echo gave them was Pabu, right?
Yeah,
or some safe space.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter.
Send them to Rax.
That's what I was kind of hoping for, but again, like I talked about, I'm glad with how it happened. But I loved another like love. Like, there's just these moments throughout where I was like, this is just, it's like everything we talked about, like the lessons that they're trying to tell, they just enforce it over and over and over again. I love that Echo was like, it was just default that Omega was staying.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if Hunter was there, that he would have said the same thing, but
kind of buffered. I think he would. I think season 1 or season 2, absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. But now, yeah, Omega's there.
And it's understandable Hunter's concerns. And it even happens, we'll talk about in the epilogue, a very similar concept. But and Echo always seemed to be kind of like the, whatever, let her do whatever she wants.
That's the Reg in him.
I thought it was so funny when he said, kids. It was just love Echo. Yeah. Can we talk about something that I think is completely inconsequential?
Is it, though?
I think so. I think you know what I'm talking about.
I don't.
The poster for this show, this season, had the sweet looking green blaster crossbow
we
thing.
talked about this off the air.
We did. Echo gave it to her. It was so sweet.
She lit it up once.
In the fog, potentially giving her position away to CX2.
Yeah.
And did not fire it. And we haven't seen it since.
It was so cool.
I wish we could see it. It's so cool.
It was on not quite at the same level as having Finn with a lightsaber in the movie posters.
It's almost, but that they used that to subvert our expectations. This was just like, wah, wah.
It's like, it was cool.
Yeah,
we just didn't want to animate it.
I wonder if we'll see it in the future. We'll continue moving forward so that we can talk about that. So yeah, then we see the bad, they end up getting out, and we kind of see and I'm going to make sure I'm remembering this correctly. They get out.
Hold up. We forgot something very important.
What do we forget?
We forgot when the Bad Batch gets captured.
No, we haven't done that yet.
No, we did.
Because they end up leaving, and it's in a separate hangar, right? Because Echo's not with them.
No, but this happens before they get out.
I thought it was after.
Before.
Okay, so
according to Wikipedia,
I believe you. I messed it up in my mind. Long episode.
It is, and everything kind of runs together. Because remember we kind of talked about Hemlock lets out the worst batch.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember they're coming out the hangar. They were going into the hangar where the Zilbies broke out of,
mm-hmm.
and Hemlock kind of understands that.
Yeah.
He knows the way they think
because they like Echo and Emery see them before they're able to meet up with Omega. You're completely correct. I messed it up in my mind.
It's okay.
But anyway, we see this crazy fight between these CX clones and the Bad Batch.
And it just got crazier. Oh, and we also forgot about the part where they let the other clones out.
I don't think we got there yet.
There's so many...
We didn't get there yet.
Oh, no.
No, because...
No, I jumped the gun just a tad. So...
The fight.
The worst batch comes, does some crazy acrobatic, sweet fighting.
Cool Star Wars action.
Yeah.
I mean, the swords were cool.
The dialogue was cool.
Yeah. There was one...
Probably got the coldest line in the Bad Batch thus far.
What was it?
After the worst batch does eventually defeat the Bad Batch, Crosshair is reaching for a pistol that's on the ground.
Yeah.
And one of the CX Shadow, whatever you want to call them, takes his sword and says, first he steps on his arm to make sure he can't go anywhere. And he says, "You should really be more careful with your shooting hand." Yeah,
and then I think we've kind of touched, we don't need to break through the action on all that, but yeah, we see, thankfully no like scream or
it was
sound.
Heavily implied what just happened.
Crosshair getting his hand cut off. We talked about Crosshair moving past his tremors, and
now he's forced to.
I was not expecting it to be like that.
No, that was brutal.
I know, and we'll talk about how the resolution to the Crosshair shakiness stuff, and it is. We were hovering over, I feel like, in what we've said, what was going to happen. It was just a matter of sliding some things around.
Yeah.
But so now they have. Excuse me. The Bad Batch is defeated,
and they've been captured.
We then get to the clone, the kids getting away.
Yeah.
And we now see Echo and Omega going to break out the clones.
Right.
As Dan said, the clones are there.
This was Echo's primary goal.
And this was something that they've been talking about all season.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very nice to be able to get there and see that.
And I think looping back to the title, I think this is also part of the cavalry that has arrived.
The clones.
Yeah.
And it was just really nice to hear Echo give like that heartfelt speech and basically say, "You can go, but we need to do this too." And it was just so nice to see them all want to help.
Yeah.
Like they're all brothers, and like that.
The one said, "I have one last fight in me," or something like that. Oh, getting goosebumps thinking about it.
I know. And as this is happening, they're breaking everything out. Echo and Omega are kind of hatching their plan to go rescue them. Echo's able to ultimately figure out where they are, but we see two other interesting characters that are in the prison. We see Nala Se and Hemlock. Nala Se...
Hemlock? Or
not Hemlock, Rampart.
They're the same
They're the same character in science or military. Anyway, thank you for correcting me. But we see Nala Se and Rampart. Nala Se basically says to Omega, "I need to go destroy my research." And
wouldn't you like to do that?
Most often, yes. But she basically tells Omega, like, "Go. I need to go do this." And you see Rampart get this little look on his face, like, "I'm going to be back in the Empire."
Yeah, and he takes
and we can kind of honestly probably talk about that resolution before because it kind of cuts back and forth. But we can. The clones all head off with with Echo and Omega, and they're the same guy,
right?
Anyway, they
and Omega gives
Nala Se Emery's datapad,
right? Which Emery gave to Omega to help get around the facility.
I thought that was a nice little inversion on Nala Se giving Omega her datapad.
Yeah,
it was really cute. Just again speaking to Omega's like growth, but starting with the Nala Se Rampart situation,
right.
We see Nala Se going to her lab, and she ends up picking up sneakily a bomb.
Yeah.
I don't know if she knew she was being followed or knew something could go wrong.
I think she knew she had to destroy it.
And I think she was trying to wipe it,
yeah.
technologically, but I think she knew something could very easily go wrong in the situation she was in.
Yeah.
We also see Rampart slithering around in true Rampart fashion.
Randall Boggs.
He was Randall Boggs.
Except Steve Buscemi's a cooler character.
Yeah, no. Rampart, interestingly, is played by a guy who is in Jedi Survivor and Horizon Forbidden West.
Oh, nice.
Very cool. Great characters. You'll learn.
At some point.
Definitely Survivor, maybe Horizon. Anyway, Rampart picks up a blaster, and as Nala Se is trying to delete everything, and you see her starting to actually delete things, she has Rampart come in and basically pull a gun on her and say, "Tell me what's going on."
Yeah.
So now Rampart knows about Project Necromancer. Obviously, the importance of that. It's almost like he wants to blackmail the Empire by having that information to put him back in a position of power, which is such a sad goal.
Yeah.
After spending so much time with the Bad Batch.
But we knew this. We knew this was the goal. We knew
100%.
He even told Crosshair, like, you're like me. You're only out for yourself.
Yeah, no. Rampart's treachery is not surprising, but to be reinstated in the Empire is just
But it probably would
sad.
would have happened.
I think they would have just killed him.
Maybe.
Depends on who he presented that option to. But nevertheless, we don't need to worry about that.
Around Tarkin.
We don't need to worry about that though, because Nala Se decided she was going to unfortunately sacrifice herself with the thermal detonator. And
I think Nala Se saw the writing on the wall.
Oh yeah, no, she knew what was going to happen.
Put it behind her back and pressed. Started the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the thermal detonators work, you press the button, you throw it, and it's like a grenade, right?
Mm-hmm. And she just held on to it.
And knowing that most likely Rampart was going to, unfortunately, not let her leave the room, and unfortunately her fears were correct.
And in a true, like, this is the connection to the Rise of Skywalker right here. This portion of the episode where Nala Se completely wipes out all of their cloning information.
It was comical in the sense of we knew what was going to happen. We saw her press the button, and Rampart does unfortunately shoot her. And then as she fell, the thermal detonator kind of just rolls out comically.
Mm-hmm.
Just rolls out from underneath her and kind of lands at the feet of Rampart.
I wish he got to scream one more time, though.
No, he was...
I loved his screams.
Well, you can go back and rewatch it.
I have. But yeah, that is the connection. That's why we see Palpatine dangling from a claw in The Rise of Skywalker.
I'd love to think who's controlling it. One of the non-force sensitive Palpatine clones, where he's like, move me to the left. No, the other
communicating
left.
through the Force.
The other left.
You're writing the Robot Chicken sketch.
I wish I could.
Have you seen the one with Rey and it's recent?
No.
Rey. We'll have to watch that after we're done recording. Anyway, so that was a huge deal. That was part of the mission was save the clones, and we knew for us the mission there would have to be messing up the Palpatine cloning operation and saving the clones. So that tackles one of those. Unfortunately, we lost Nala Se, but it is what it is.
Not only did we lose Nala Se, we lost the last of the Kaminoans.
Which is so sad. And their technology, which is, again, why we see the Claw Palpatine. And I think it's so fitting that the Empire destroyed Kamino. And they've said that it wasn't just the Tipoca City, the main one. Mm-hmm. They destroyed every settlement on Kamino.
Yeah.
So they literally removed any chance of being able to figure this out again.
Well, it's just
themselves. So they self-defeating prophecy.
Just like they did Geonosis.
Mm-hmm. Exact same thing. It's like the Empire has very little foresight.
Yeah.
Which is consistent amongst all the stories.
Did you think it was interesting that I thought Tantive Base kind of looked like Kamino? Just like the dome format of it. Reminded me a lot of Kamino.
I didn't get there. Where I thought it reminded me of Kamino was the vault. The white.
Oh, yeah.
That, for me, was and it was like Omega going back to a place that resembled. I think we arrived at the same conclusion for different reasons. But yes, I think it is meant to probably have some sort of drawback to that. But we eventually now back to the clones. Literally the clones. But specifically talking about all of the clones with Echo and Omega.
Mm-hmm.
And we see essentially Omega and Echo formulate this plan where they're going to rescue the Bad Batch, who we see in that chamber where they were trying. I think Hemlock was trying to like brainwash them.
Yes,
much like he was trying to make them a CX2.
This is what he even said something like Crosshair was able to do this, was able to resist this before, but he probably can't do it now
because it's gotten better.
Yes, and then
like he's got a whole little machine for it now. It was just a table when Crosshair was doing it.
And Hemlock drops probably my favorite line of the episode. Once Omega and Echo get back into the chamber, he goes, "This is every clone's weakness: their willingness to come back and not leave anybody. Their loyalty to one another."
And I think that highlights ultimately his downfall is no loyalty gets you nothing at the end of the day.
Right.
But Omega ends up through Echo and the clones creating a distraction in the lower level. In the upper level, Omega is able to eventually release all the Bad Batch.
Right.
Which is crazy. And you do see Crosshair does not have his hand. They've got it all patched up, but Crosshair has lost his shooting hand, which is crazy. And we'll, again, talk about that a little bit later. But we go through this crazy action sequence. It was really cool seeing all the CX troopers.
Including CX2.
Including CX2. We'll talk about him in a second. We see we see Hemlock and Omega. And Hemlock handcuffs himself to Omega.
Smart.
And because she says, "You don't have your information." And he says, "I've got you." And handcuffs himself to her and they leave.
Yeah.
And this is where we get some of the coolest action, where we see all the clones fighting the CX troopers. And we do see CX2.
Yes.
We eventually end up after this cool fight with all of the CX troopers dying.
Including CX2.
Including CX2. A spear through the chest.
Yeah, probably the most gruesome death.
Yes. And
not only was it a spear through the chest, they pinned him to a wall.
Yeah.
Where he was hanging.
And this is when I was like, I looked at the runtime. I thought about how much was left, and I was like, this isn't tech. Thank God. Because imagine, as you were talking about for weeks on end, if they took his helmet off and that was tech, it's already a heavy show.
I think they could have. I've told you this off the air. I think they wrote that scene so it could have been tech if they wanted it to.
I completely agree that they left the breadcrumbs all season if they wanted to do it.
And I'm sure they wrote an episode or wrote that scene two different ways. One where it was tech and one where it wasn't tech.
And based on what we see, I don't necessarily think if it was tech that they would have been able to, like, in that moment, made him not crazy.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I'm glad Tech had a meaningful sacrifice, and it wasn't just him dangling from a wall after he was impaled.
Yeah.
So
I want to
sad, but
I do want to thank everybody for listening to Tech Watch. I think that's going to wrap it up.
That's the conclusion. I have a few more things to talk about Tech, but I think that's the end of Tech Watch.
Yeah, that is
in
Tech
its
Watch.
Truest form. That is Tech Watch.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed
putting up with our nonsense.
I was wrong.
Good.
I'm getting that on record, on audio recording. I was wrong.
I was insufferable on Wednesday morning.
Oh, no. He did a whole song and dance, and he goes, I said, "Don't you want to save this for when we record?" He went, "Oh, don't worry. I'll do it again." He's been very toned down. So thank you, Dan.
I don't want to be a sore winner.
You were a little on Wednesday, but it's okay.
Well, Wednesday doesn't count.
Not on the air. No one can prove it. So we get the Bad Batch going out. Echo and the clone, the other regs, go to get a ship to leave.
Right.
And Crosshair and Hunter, I think Wrecker also goes with.
Yeah, Wrecker went with Echo.
Because I think he was like worse off.
And remember, Hemlock took CX2's
buttons.
tech button pad.
Uh-huh.
And before he left. So Hemlock and Omega are on this long landing platform
in the beautiful Bad Batch animation rain.
In the rain, Hemlock calls CX2 ship, and you knew this was it. Everything was coming down to this bridge.
Oh yeah.
And so Hemlock and Omega are Hemlock's kind of dragging her down this corridor, bridge, whatever you want to call it, and in true standoff fashion, Hunter and Crosshair are dragging themselves out there, and they finally catch up to them on the bridge, or close enough to a point where they say, "Stop." And this is where I thought it could get a little
I was worried for so many reasons. Because Hemlock kind of drags Omega over to the ledge.
Oh, yeah. And he even said, if they shoot, they're not going to shoot me, because if they shoot me, you're going down with me.
And that's where we see... So I'm going to kind of put this in slow-mo. We see Omega start to fiddle with the medical tool that she's been using to help her the entire time she's been at Tantus the second time. And I thought she was going to, wiggle the handcuffs. Mm-hmm. Instead, she stabs it straight into Hemlock's leg.
Yeah, and before that...
I want to talk about them separately. Okay. I just wanted to say, that this is what's happening over there.
Yeah,
and we see them fiddling. And this is all bouncing back and forth.
Right.
But stabs him in the leg, which leads him open to what happens with Hunter and Crosshair. So we see Crosshair, using his non-dominant hand because his dominant hand has been cut off.
Maybe Crosshair was just a lefty all along. Lefties rise up.
Dan's a lefty. I understand if you no longer want to listen to our podcast.
They'll get 7 more years of you than they will me.
Oh, God. Lefty humor. Anyway, that's a dad joke.
That wasn't even a dad joke. That was just an off.
Dan is my father. Anyway, where are we? In a very important moment, you made a lefty joke.
Yes.
The Hunter is leaning out so Crosshair can lean on him and support him. So they're really operating as one, it seems. Right. And Crosshair's I can't do it. What if I hit her?
Yeah.
And I think it helped with Omega's distraction of stabbing him in the leg, causing him to raise the handcuffs up.
Well, remember, Crosshair was saying, I'm not going to take this shot because if I miss, I can hit her, or even worse, she'll go with them.
And it does it harkens back to the shot that he missed on the tracking.
Mm-hmm. And Hunter tells him, "You'll be okay. She knows what to do." And Crosshair's like, "Well, when do I shoot?" And he's like, "You'll know when."
And he takes his breath that Omega taught him to take from Gunji.
And then goes back to Omega stabbing Hemlock in the leg. Hemlock raises his hand in pain. And this is it. The shot comes. Crosshair shoots the handcuff, breaks it in half.
And, so Omega's safe. And then we see what might be the most gratifying Star Wars villain death. Or certainly up there. Because my man got shot 8 times.
He took it like a champ. Him and Scorch. We didn't even talk about Scorch.
See, people were upset about this. I don't care.
Listen, I understand it.
I saw a tweet from some ridiculous person basically saying it made him contemplate self-harm because Scorch died so unceremoniously.
Again, not to quote Batman, you either die the hero or live long enough to see the villain, become the villain. And that's exactly what happened with Scorch. He, like many clones, joined the Empire. And, for example, Cody. Would they have had the same reaction if it was Cody? Probably. I don't know.
I don't even know. Let's not waste time talking about the crazies.
But yes, so Scorch also died in the same.
That is in fact the thing.
Unceremonious or ceremonious, depending on which side you're cheering for, manner.
It was just very nice to see Hemlock get shot a bunch of times and then fall off a ledge.
Yeah, somehow.
We'll have to have Hemlock watch. One thing
could have been saved with a railing.
One thing we didn't talk about is there was a little call with Tarkin earlier. Tarkin basically said, "I'm on my way."
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of funny. And I got the impression in this episode, something that I did not get last time that Tarkin was had a little phone call with Hemlock. Mm-hmm. I think he might know a little bit more about what's going on there than he initially let on that we could see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think we're starting to see the rise of Tarkin. Really move up in the ranks.
In my mind at first, the way they talked, Hemlock and Tarkin were equals, but I think Tarkin might have been
at this point.
And it's hard to say, because Hemlock is a new position. We don't know. It's not a military rank. He's in the science division. Yeah. But I think we got the sense that Tarkin is above him.
Yeah.
So we ultimately see let's talk about Hemlock goes over the edge and Omega comes up to the Bad Batch. This is where I kind of shed a little tear, where Omega hugs Crosshair first.
I would not have had that on my bingo card.
Really?
No.
It was the only time I got a little choked up in this episode.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot. And I think it really showed that the bond that those two formed.
Oh, yeah. And we got to see pretty much every second of it.
This would be a bad analogy. It's almost like a puppy who's running back to both of their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do they go to first?
Jenna.
Well, I wasn't talking. Just, like, they went to one first. She went to Crosshair first. You could argue, has a stronger bond with Crosshair than she does with Hunter now.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of all their experiences they went through independently. But,
it was so nice.
Moving.
And so they come back, they get on the ship, and they're able to escape with all the clones. Everyone made it out, which was insane. I was not ready for that.
And then right after, they make the jump to hyperspace.
And you pointed this out. I did not even... I'm so used to seeing it that I didn't even think about it.
One of my favorite scenes, the Imperials come out of hyperspace. And I think, as I mentioned to you, I think this is the first time we've seen a Superstar Destroyer.
It is. And that's why I was like... I'm so desensitized to it. I was like, that's Star Destroyer, okay.
Everything up to this has just been repurposed Venators. Mm-hmm. But this was the first time we saw a Superstar Destroyer.
Yeah, no, it was a great touch.
How big it was compared to the Venators. It was so good.
It was a wonderful touch. And we see Tarkin, basically, so it's switched today, and we see Tarkin and a bunch of Imperial, they look like they're doing investigation as to what was there. Shock Troopers, yeah.
That's important to note.
Uh-huh. So he clearly has gone up in status in the Empire.
Is. Yeah.
But we see him talk about how all the funding, Hemlock failed, and all the funding for this needs to be redirected to Project Stardust, which we know from Rogue One is, in fact, the Death Star.
Yes.
And I think for me, this is a great connection. This is a great way to tie together a whole bunch of things, especially for me, Rebels.
Yeah.
Where this is showing Tarkin's selfish nature of continuously repurposing all Imperial funds to go towards the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of left them with, after the Death Star got destroyed, with no other options.
Other than to build it again.
Because they have there's no direction other than that. And I think it just goes to show, one of the true weaknesses of the Empire is, their overconfidence.
Yeah.
And you could see it through Rampart. You could see it through Hemlock. And it just goes all the way up to the Emperor, who we, again, didn't see this episode. But, I just thought that was a great connection, basically saying, they screwed the Empire over more than they can ever know.
Yeah.
Thinking about the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And it was such a great lesson to have it just go right into the Death Star. This could have theoretically been worse, much like the TIE Defenders and Rebels. This could have been worse for the galaxy if that was working rather than the Death Star. Not to belittle the importance of the Death Star.
Speaking of the Death Star, as this panned out, in typical Star Wars fashion, typical Star Wars transition, we just went up. Trademark transition. They just look up to the sky, and then the new scene fades in. I was expecting to see the Death Star there. I really was, or at least part of it.
I am the timeline of the Bad Batch and the timeline of the Death Star construction. It gets a little muddy for me at this particular point, but we know it's certainly a thing because at the end of Revenge of the Sith, you see it.
Yeah,
it's already kind of. Your boy Count Dooku was working on the plans in Attack of the Clones, so we're well on from that.
And then, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, we see them actually physically building it.
And we know it's, by the time of Rebels, which is just shy of A New Hope, it's all working. But...
yeah, it's operational. We know it's operational in, obviously, Rogue One.
Yeah. But yeah, no Death Star, but what we do get to see in this episode is where does this story end for the clones and the Bad Batch? So we get back to Pabu, which I like to think it wasn't the Empire that was going to Pabu, it was Hemlock's troops. So I don't think the Empire necessarily, in my mind, the Empire doesn't know about Pabu.
I think they know. I just don't think they care.
I think they care.
What is Pabu going to do?
It's the clones. It's not Pabu.
Again, they don't care about the clones. We've seen that's been the whole theme. They don't care about the clones.
They did serve their purpose, but I think they could be a problem.
How? They're old. They're
not old at the time of the end of the Bad Batch.
But what are they going to do?
They clearly... What are they going to do? Destroy the Emperor's cloning operation and release Zilla Beast, which they were presumably using for some important research. That's...
I don't think...
Regardless, this is tangential.
This is hypothetical, yeah.
they don't know. They clearly are fine on Pabu.
Yeah.
But we see Emery and Echo basically saying they're going to go off together and work with Rex, which it's exciting to see Emery like be a good guy.
Again, I want to know more about her. We can talk about that in a second.
And we're going to. And we see the kids are going to be reunited with their parents. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if there was going to be some sort of Ventress connection with the Path to like get them.
We'll talk about it in a second.
And they could safety and the backdoor pilot. Anyway, and then we see the Bad Batch kind of sit together
in a nice little pose and a nice little picture ending.
And there was a space left. It's almost as if they left a space. Like I've seen some art on Twitter where people like drew tech in too.
Yeah.
That space was definitely left there intentionally because it's like it's kind of off like the spacing, so it's nice to have that there. Mm-hmm. And I just before we talk about the epilogue, I want to say I just love this. This is exactly what I wanted. Like the clones had been through so much, and to have a happy ending for the clones.
I didn't think we were going to get it.
No, I thought several times through this episode I thought Wrecker was going to go,
and then
specifically Wrecker.
Yeah,
and I'm very glad with how it ended. I think I've talked about a few times. I don't like when killing off characters is used as like see, you should care now. Look how high the stakes are. I think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is a great example of how characters you can still have stakes without characters dying. Mm-hmm. And I like this is another example. We did have tech and everything, but this is another example of how that can be. Yeah. Anything else with the current Bad Batch timeline before we go to the epilogue?
No.
Were you expecting an epilogue? Is my first thing I want to say.
Not after that ending.
I was expecting something. I know we're going to get something. I honestly thought it would be a little more, not to keep comparing to Rebels, but more Rebels like where we see kind of like, I love that so much. And if you've ever watched Parks and Rec, like the finale that kind of gives you like flash forwards to, see what's happening with these characters in the future. I think it honestly is better for us as Star Wars fans because Star Wars endings are usually not, we're done with this character, we'll never see them again. It's when will we see these characters again, in what form, book, comic, TV show, video game, all that kind of stuff. So I thought we would see one. Again, this wasn't what I was expecting. Would you like to do the honors? Do you want me to?
It's your show.
My show? It's our show.
Your epilogue.
My epilogue.
I didn't think we were getting an epilogue.
Well, since I did, you see this woman, and you see Pabu. It looks like it's thriving, which is exciting. At night, and you see this woman kind of with a bag scurrying through one of the caves in Pabu, presumably the same cave that everyone goes in and out of.
Yeah.
And this woman you ultimately see is a fully grown Omega.
Yeah.
Which is insane. I like, it was kind of weird. It's like if you haven't seen like a younger family member for a while, and then you like see them and you're like, jeez. Especially, when you look at the first season and how young she was and how they've really gently aged her up to the point where like through her being taller and the hairstyle aging her up, it was really cool to see. And then you see her kind of turning getting ready to leave clearly in a ship that looks like it was made from the pieces of the Marauder, which I thought was awesome. You see Gonki, and then you see a light turn on, and then there's Grandpa Hunter.
Grandpa Hunter looked like he was wearing the new, like he was vacationing at Jimmy Buffett's village.
He essentially is the Star Wars equivalent of that.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. The design, everything about it. He had his gray in his beard, little rounder around the tummy. Mm-hmm. It was, you can tell that they've lived a very good life, which is just all I could have asked for from the end of this show. But we see Omega, who again had from a book or something, Hunter's necklace, and Hunter's. Was it his like scarf or his like headband that she had around her head?
I thought he was wearing his headband.
He was wearing a headband, but she had like the red.
Oh, then maybe she was wearing his.
So I was like, that's definitely his something. Mm-hmm. And she basically tells Hunter that the rebellion needs pilots, and she's going to go join the rebellion. And the show ends with a very heartwarming callback to Omega, wanting adventure and wanting to go off to help people. And Hunter's, he initially says no. Mm-hmm. But this shows that Hunter has he's learned the lessons. They've all learned the lessons they need to in the show because Hunter says, go ahead, we'll always be here if you need us. Yeah. It was such a heartwarming way to end the show. Mm-hmm. And do you have anything else you want to add about that?
No, it couldn't have asked for a better ending.
No. And we end seeing Omega get onto her mini Marauder, or whatever you want to call it. Gonki's there. She's got it kind of set up. She's got her lights from her room. She's got the Tuca doll, Lula.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see on the dashboard Tech's goggles. If you remember, Tech taught her how to fly. And we said Tech like really imprinted on her. They had that. One of my favorite Tech moments is when they talked about how, or like they were in that water cave kind of thing, and they tied that like heart to heart about how he processes things and everything.
Yeah,
it was just so nice to see his like spirit live on. And I think honestly that's a more realistic depiction of like legacy and stuff.
Yeah,
rather than him he's back. So I really liked how they took that.
Yeah.
Anything else to add about this? And then we see Omega fly off to be in the rebellion.
Yeah.
Timeline-wise, I'm not sure. I hope she's calling her friend Hera. You know they met first season.
Yeah.
So that's what I have in my mind.
Do you think Omega gets an X-Wing?
I don't know. I like her ship. I like the mini Marauder, as I'm calling it.
I don't know how that would fare against the TIEs.
I don't know. Hopefully we'll see. And
yeah, really...
I do want to, before we dive into our second topic, last week we talked about things that won't happen, things that might happen, and things that are likely to happen. I want to go through it. I have them written down.
Let's do it.
So we said things that are likely to happen. Rex and other clones. We were wrong. Wolf. Wrong. Some characters will escape Tantus. We were correct.
Sorry, chalk that up. We're 1 for 3 at the moment.
Casualties.
Wrong on that one.
We were wrong on that one in a good way. Zilla Beast Carnage. So
2 for 5.
2 for 5. Might. CX2 tech reveal. Omega Force use. Palpatine connection to Exegol. I think the Palpatine connection to Exegol might be...
It was implied, but not...
And it was like Tarkin was a proxy for actually having Palpatine come.
So we counting that?
Let's count it.
3 for 8.
To ourselves. We make the rules here. Won't happen. Ventress at Tantus at all.
4 for 9.
Vader Inquisitors.
4 for 10.
We said won't happen, so this is good.
Oh, yeah. 5 for... So, 5 for 10?
Yes.
Okay.
No Ventress Tantus, no Vader Inquisitors, no Cody.
6 for 10.
No Rex and Wolf Resolution.
7 for 10.
That's not terrible. For us, I think we did okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so sticking with that format.
No, 7 for 11.
We're good. 7-11. Eat a Slurpee. Anyway, I love the finale. I love the series. As I've said before, I was not excited for this. When they announced the show, I was like, why? Why them? It ended so much. It was and ended so much better than I could have ever imagined. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts overall on the series?
Oh, I loved it.
I'm excited to rewatch it on, rewatch it knowing the story and pick out where it's going and like savor Tech more.
Yeah.
Savor the interactions between all these characters. Now that I know what's happening, like going back and rewatching Rebels was such an enjoyable experience for me, and I'm excited to do that with this show.
Yes, I agree.
All right, you got anything else to add?
Yeah.
Nothing
else to add on the Bad Batch from.
We are running a touch long. We're at about an hour and 3 minutes. I would still like to do our second segment, which is what could Star Wars' next animated show be? And we want to do this in a very similar format to what we just ran through with our predictions from the last episode. What shows do we think are likely? What shows do we think could happen? And what shows, despite us wanting them, might be unlikely?
Oh, this is a tough thing to do without knowing the Rey trilogy.
Not necessarily trilogy. Only confirmed for one movie right now, unfortunately.
The Rey movie.
The Rey future.
The Rucher.
Okay.
So, I think on a... You want me to go first?
Yeah.
On a likely... Are we doing this not happening... Unlikely, likely...
Let's just throw some ideas out, and then we'll put them into one of these bins.
Animated show on Luke's Jedi Academy.
Maybe.
Right?
Maybe. I think that's a maybe.
I feel like they could do a lot with that, but I also don't know if we're ever going to see Luke in animation. Ever.
I don't think that's necessarily the case, especially considering that Mark Hamill is one of the most prolific voice actors. Yeah. I mean, my favorite version of Joker. But I'd like to say, I'm going to add what I'd like to see on top of that. Luke's Jedi Academy / Ben Solo, Luke / Ben Solo show.
Yeah.
I think this would be like, I love The Mandalorian and that era they're setting up, but I think they're intentionally for the longest time have stayed away from Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And I think they're softening on that a little, and I think it would be really cool to flesh out what Luke was doing. And much like The Bad Batch, The Mandalorian, these are all starting to build up the sequel trilogy in a way that the Clone Wars built up the prequels. I think understanding more about Luke and understanding more about the state of the galaxy with the Jedi will both inform on the sequel trilogy and what Rey's going to be up to in the new one.
Right. And I think where we need to be heading at the moment is we should be getting more sequels content. More of these animated shows, like we did with the Clone Wars. Like, we added all this depth to this time where people really were kind of confused on what happened. And now they can tell the story how they want to and really make each movie special.
And this, the way they're building this up is not the same way they built it up in the Clone Wars. It's more like providing rationale rather than more like being emotionally more connected to the characters. I'd love to see, and this is where I'm going to put in a maybe as well, like something directly with the sequel characters.
That'd be cool.
I don't know if it's... I think it's only a year between... And I would like this time to be longer. A year between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. There's a book, Resistance Reborn. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
I think that could be a good like mini-series, a season or two. Just to show like what they were up to, how we get Rey to where she is, how the Resistance is where it is, all of that kind of stuff. I want to talk about likely. I think Rex show. Something with Rex.
Rex, Wolf.
We are so set up for more... Rex,
Cody, Wolf. There
Emery,
has to be
Echo.
Has to be resolution because we know that 3 of them make it and stay together.
And like Hauser is alive. I did not think Hauser would be making it out of the show. I think there's some sort of, I'm going to call it Rex, Cody, Wolf clone show.
I think that should. If we thought the Bad Batch was going to be sad, this is going to be even sadder.
Yeah, no, this
because we know
it can't end well.
We know the end game for that one.
Which I mean, and I wonder how we'll see these stories. Like, is it a full animated show? Is it like Tales of the Clones?
Kind of like what we discussed with this new format with Tales of the Blank. They can do anything they want. I mean,
they can. And I think it's just a matter of how they decide to tackle these stories.
Right. And I think all these shows that we talked about so far can be in the Tales of a Blank style.
They can. But I'm more with this thinking about the next, like, the big, full 18-episode animated show.
I don't know if we're ever going to get that.
I disagree.
I don't... It's not me. That's fine. I'm not saying they're not ever... I just don't know.
I think we'll get it. I mean, I would prefer to have time is something that I think time with characters is something that allows you to become so attached to Kanan, to Ezra, to Omega, to Crosshair. If we didn't spend as much time with Crosshair as we did, I just pointed up to my Crosshair Lego. If we didn't spend that much time with Crosshair, I would just not have cared.
Yeah.
Like, so I think we need time to build these. It takes an investment from the people making the shows. An investment from us watching the shows to form attachment to these characters. Anyway, off my high horse.
That's fine.
I think likely could be a High Republic animated show.
Yeah.
Do you think likely or maybe?
I think that's TBD. I think that really depends on how well the Acolyte's received.
Does that mean maybe?
I think it's more likely than maybe.
We'll put it in likely then.
My guess is they have something lined up. Also, speaking of the Acolyte, did you see the new movie poster with a new person on it?
It's tech. Wait till you see how many buttons he pushes.
He's pressing all of mine.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for the Acolyte. Unlikely shows, I don't think we need a Darth Vader show.
No.
I think that's something people would ask for.
I do want to see a show about the Stormtroopers or the TIE pilots. Just something.
See, that is more your speed. Where for me, it's like...
I know. I think part of the beauty of Star Wars is we get to see the human aspects of everybody.
We'll put that in a maybe.
It's unlikely. They're not.
You think unlikely?
I don't think they're going to do it.
We'll say Everyman show.
I know.
Everyman pilot show.
Star Wars Squadrons. If they made that a show.
Well, remember there were talks of it being revived, but the Rogue Squadron movie was something that was going to be focused on pilots. People love the pilots.
I want the Empire. I want to see more of the inner workings, and I want to see, because we kind of got it in The Force Awakens.
Did you read Lost Stars?
No.
That is I think this Lost Stars is a great representation of how what you're describing could be done well. Mm-hmm. There are these two childhood friends. One ends up going to the Empire, one ends up being in the Rebellion, and they're just pilots. Yeah. And you see how they how every person, like they go to a ball, like an Imperial ball at the old Jedi Temple. Yeah. Like that kind of stuff. Like, what is it like to be in the Empire?
Right, and we see, like, especially looking at Finn in The Force Awakens, we see that the stormtroopers are human, mm-hmm. and B, are forced to do unsavory things, and they don't necessarily want to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think adding that human aspect of it, of showing that sometimes this was just the best option they had.
Mm-hmm. And like adding nuance to characters that are generalized, I think has been a strength of the more recent Star Wars stuff. Right. Like the Tuskens, for example. Yeah. I think that kind of story. And Finn, I want to put in, this could be, the show you're describing could be a Finn show.
I agree. It can be anything. And we can, for example, like Iden Versio could be in it. Maybe, potentially, unlikely.
I would love to see a live action Versio. That's against what we're talking about, but
I know, but I feel like they open so many doors if they were to do that. If you just follow one person or follow a couple different people, mm-hmm. Did you show like follow a pilot, follow a stormtrooper?
And what I was saying about how the like time and attachment would make you love these characters, and I suspect in a show like that, you would probably see some sort of defection.
Right.
So you feel less guilty about liking a bad guy.
Well, you could even argue that they're not even bad guys.
If they're doing bad things, they're bad guys.
It's okay. What is the HR person on the Death Star a villain?
I feel like we should not go further into this conversation for sake of time and being insufferable and arguing with each other. I want to talk about one more show. Two things. First, I want to say I desperately want more sequel content. I know we've talked about this.
I think this is what we're going. I've said it before,
and we literally wrote it down.
And I've said it to you in person. I've said it on air. I am not the hugest sequel fan. However, I would love more content from it, and I think more content would allow people to better appreciate it and then better appreciate the movies. Mm-hmm. So I'm all for it. I don't care what it is. Give it to me. I'll watch it.
Makes me happy. I desperately need it. I just want to spend more time with these characters, and we kind of are. We don't really know about the Rey movie,
and that's why I was hesitant to say in the beginning, like, I don't know what we're gonna get. For example, if we get in the Rey movie, Rey starts a new Jedi temple, or the New Order of Jedi. I don't know what we're calling it at the moment.
New Jedi Order, I think, is what they've been using.
New Jedi Order opens a whole array of new characters and new people we can. If we want to stay time with. And if we want to stay attached to the people on the wall that I'm looking at of Rey, Poe, Finn, we can still do that in the movies, and we can use the show to supplement that, to get new characters.
Mm-hmm. And the Clone War, I'm going to not ramble on about this for hours, but a Clone Wars level show with the sequel characters.
It can be done very easily. Mm-hmm. And we could even set it. We can even set it between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
That is literally like a day. That's
Force Awakens? I thought Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker were a day.
That's an hour. Or a year. I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Force Awakens and The Last Jedi is like almost instantaneous.
Oh. Oops.
I don't love that, actually. That's one of my gripes with it. Because you remember, it goes straight into them like evacuating Dakar. Kylo Ren still has his scar.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's right after.
I think we need time.
This is one of my biggest issues is there's no time. I thought it's really cool to have it literally take place over like those two movies so close together. But I wish there was more time to further flesh out the characters. That's why I think between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker is a great time for it.
That or between, I mean, never mind.
Pre-Force Awakens could be good with like Resistance.
That's what we're getting there.
And I want to talk about Star Wars Resistance for just a second. I know you haven't watched it yet. Yeah. It is not what you want from it. It's a good show. It's fun. It's not a Clone Wars Bad Batch Rebels.
I don't have that expectation for it.
at the time, though, it was what came on right after Rebels. I had the animation style is really good, but it is very much so more like if you tell someone, like if you told your parents you're watching a Star Wars cartoon. If I told my mother I was watching a Star Wars cartoon, she'd be like, "Oh, is it for kids?" I'd say, "No. Actually, one of the main characters got his hand cut off last week."
You want to watch those people get beheaded by Darth Maul?
That is what we want from Star Wars. Not want, but like that is the caliber storytelling that I want from Star Wars. It's like telling meaningful stories. It doesn't matter what the form is. Resistance was very much so like Kaz would fall and he'd go like, "Ah!" It's kind of goofy.
I don't think we're going to get any animation between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens.
I think they're doing plenty in that
and
era.
I think that all the live action stuff is going to be that.
It is, and it's filling that.
What we're going to get from Ahsoka, Mandalorian, Boba Fett, all of these shows coming together will lead into the First Order.
Agreed. And it already has. I think having it be more overt, I think they've been very gentle with it for probably wanting to kind of like Trojan horse the people who don't love the sequels.
Yeah.
It is okay to not love the sequels.
Yeah.
But rational reasons as to why, not because Rey's a lady or because what. No, you get the point. But I think sneakily making people like it is going to be great.
Much as we were talking about the flaws of the Empire and how they, in all these different aspects, worked into this, showing that the Empire is vulnerable in so many different ways. That's what we're seeing now with the new live action is the New Republic was vulnerable in so many different ways. And they did it to themselves.
It's like a give and take. And I think we can save this for a separate time, but like the weakness of the New Republic is that the rebellion was a small group of people fighting against the Empire. The rest of the galaxy was kind of like complacent.
Yeah.
Where I feel like after the Rise of Skywalker, the whole galaxy united to stop this on Exegol, which is, I think, brighter days ahead for the galaxy per se. But I have one more show I want to talk about because we are running a little long today. We're at about an hour and 16.
It was a 50-minute episode.
It was. We had a lot to talk about. And it was the finale. The last thing I want to talk about personally in terms of these shows is I'm gonna throw it out there and you can tell me where. Let me lead into it. They brought Asajj Ventress back for this show from the dead. They refused to elaborate.
Yes.
And said that in a future story, everything will be discussed.
The answer is yes. Likely.
So I'm going to call it Ventress Hidden Path Show. And this is where we kind of talked about it with the finale of the Bad Batch.
Sorry, I cut you off. Please hash out what you were saying.
No. You did everything that... I said what I needed to.
Likely.
I think Ventress, Quinlan Vos... We clearly know that Quinlan Vos from Obi-Wan, his name's written on the wall. He's attached to the Path.
Yes.
The Path has already been used in a few different Star Wars stories. And I think Ventress was clearly brought into the show for a reason.
Yeah.
I think the lessons she taught Omega were important and everything, but why Ventress? You could have had someone else convey a similar story. Yeah. Like, honestly, it would have been a more Star Wars animation thing to have her run into Ahsoka. Like,
sweet, but yeah.
And like Ahsoka could have done the Ventress episode.
Right.
A little less snarkily, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
they brought Ventress back for a reason.
Yeah.
With her sweet new outfit.
Yellow lightsabers.
Yeah. I just think that would be a great way to continue in this era, and it could potentially connect to the clones. We could be describing this clone show that could have some connection to this.
You can use so many different avenues. You can filter so many things in through the hidden path.
Agreed. And I think like these Force sensitive kids, I think that could be a great explanation for bringing them into this. The Path is obviously protected. The point of the Path is to protect the Force sensitive people of the galaxy from the Empire and the Sith. They don't. They probably know that, but the regular galaxy doesn't. Yeah. So, could the families of these kids, after they're reunited, potentially be brought through the Path for protection?
I don't know. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, anything else to add? Any other ideas?
No, we really hashed out a lot. And so I feel like theoretically you can make an argument to make all of these shows.
Agreed.
And I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, nobody knows. But I do think it does hinge a little bit upon the success of their upcoming projects. for example, your High Republic show that you suggested, if the Acolyte does really well, which I think it will, I think the Acolyte's going to be very well received. I think,
and the publishing has already done really well for them.
I think that's going to open up the doors to more High Republic stuff. So.
I think that the way that they set up the High Republic is really good. Like the story being established in books, the era is very well defined.
Yeah,
but there are so many characters that, from the books or not, could be followed in that era, which is really exciting. So that puts us, we can recap here. An unlikely show is like a Darth Vader show. You said your dream show of following an everyday kind of Empire pilot you find unlikely.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a need for it.
Yeah, it could be cool, but
that's what Star Wars loves practicality. They love using shows for multiple messages, and they hardly ever do a show just because it'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
So
I could see that storyline being incorporated somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe we said, and this is probably the one this is the show that I want the most. And I think somehow we are aligned on this probably, but you want Luke's Jedi Academy. I want Ben Solo. I think we're describing the same show.
We can get Grogu in there.
Hopefully not. He needs to not be there.
You just said they need to kill Grogu?
No, Ben Solo destroys it. I don't want Grogu there.
I know.
Whatever. Anyway.
I know.
What do I want to say? The Ben Solo stuff is, I want it really bad.
I think we'll get it at some point. I don't know when we'll get it.
Have you read or heard of, anytime I say have you read, Dan looks at me like he has to go to the bathroom.
That was a little mean.
The Rise of Kylo Ren comic book. Have you heard of the story or anything? That comic book is what I want to show. Anyway, we also said maybe, in terms of likelihood, sequel character focus show. I think that would be great. And again, build out, but I don't necessarily know that we're going to get it. And then likely we have with the least likely of these being a High Republic show. And then what I think the Bad Batch is not clearly, but the Bad Batch is kind of setting up as a Rex, Cody, Wolf clone show or a Hidden Path show focusing on Ventress.
Mm-hmm. Can I make one comment?
Of course.
What was I going to say? I think the next animated show that we are going to get is Tales of the First Order.
I think that would be cool.
Who
would they focus on?
Kylo Ren and Hux.
Hux. Gotta love General Hux.
Well, we think about him. He's pretty young, and he is a general.
Well,
and
he's like nepotism.
But still.
Brendel. Do you know General Hux's first name?
It's
I would be so excited if you knew General Hux's first name.
I used to. It's weird.
Armitage.
That's it.
Wonderful. Anything else to add on this?
No, I'm sad. I'm sad the Bad Batch is over.
Me too. It was a wonderful, wonderful show. I really, really loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, with that, thank you so much for listening to this long episode. Yeah. Not as long as last week. Less yelling than last week. Good stuff.
Happy Star Wars Day, everybody.
Happy Star Wars.
Belated for when you hopefully listen to this.
Yeah, happy belated Star Wars Day. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like, please give us a follow, subscribe, a review on your podcast platform of choice. Give us a follow at Twitter at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And give our Facebook and YouTube pages a look if you'd like. All of our episodes go to YouTube, and they have a cool little video platform. And with that, thank you so much for listening. I'm Joey.
I am Dan.
And we'll enjoy your May the 4th, and have a good one. See you next time.
See you.